Total War Warhammer 3 is an absolutely massive game, and even though you're already familiar with Total War, or even the Warhammer series itself, each new faction in this game offers completely new mechanics and features. This means that whether you're a pro or completely new, Warhammer 3 will keep you on your toes and toss a sometimes mean amount of new features and events at you. That's why I thought it would be helpful to make a quick and easy to follow guide to the essentials of some of the Warhammer factions. This is the second of a two-part series, and in this second part, we're taking a look at Kislev, the Eastern European-inspired nation, focusing on the faction led by legendary Lord Tsarina Katarin. The first part of this series focuses on Cathay and Miao Ying, so make sure you check out part 1 as well for that sweet insight into this Chinese-inspired faction. And if this sounds like something for you, I really hope you leave a like and consider supporting me on Patreon. These videos demand a lot of time and work, and your support would really mean the world to me. And now, a guide to Total War Warhammer 3's Kislev. Kislev is a cold and harsh land, surrounded by a forever winter keeping the lands dark and covered in snow. It is in this context we take control of the Icecore and Kislev city, the only one our faction has to its name. And since we're lacking a giant wall to defend ourselves with, I'd say we do well to understand our surroundings and geopolitical layout first. As established, Kislev is a lonesome city in this wide open space. Just beyond our borders lie enemies, and whether they be Chaos or Norscar raiders, they're enemies all the same. I honestly really had a hard time with the Icecore in the beginning because I failed to play them the correct way. So let's make sure you don't make the mistakes I did, shall we? And in order to play them the best possible way, we need to remember that, yes, despite enemies all around, there are also friends here. We are in fact more or less surrounded by relatively friendly human factions, some belonging to the overarching Kislev faction, and some belonging to the Empire in the south itself. It's therefore vital to find friends where you can, to forge both trade agreements and non-aggression pacts. In this way, we secure our financial independence and lay the groundwork for future alliances or even confederations as we maintain good relations. When compared to Grand Cathay, Kislev seems a much more open-ended faction in terms of geography, open to most expansions in every direction. But going too hard too quick might have devastating consequences. You will in fact be invaded by raiders and chaos armies from the north, east, and south, and further west lies the Great Orthodoxy who will stop at nothing to stop you in their own way. It is therefore a wise choice to be mindful of not overextending, taking the easy-to-conquer cities, holding them and developing them before moving on. To the north lies the great city of Prague, a city you might find hard to take because of its garrison. And that's something you really have to think about here, because every city has a garrison, and I've never seen a stronger garrison force than the mighty Tsar Guards of Kislev. Entire armies can be lost to a well-defended city, and my number one advice here is therefore to make sure to upgrade your cities and barracks in order to receive higher tier units before straying too far from the worth of Kislev itself. One of the main mechanics for Kislev is devotion, relating to the faction's religiosity and power of religion. We do find ourselves with a mega faction with a member named the Great Orthodoxy after all. Devotion is in essence the support you have amongst the people, and in Kislev, that's important. Devotion is needed to keep chaos invasions at bay, and as long as you keep a healthy amount of devotion at any given time, say about 100, then you should feel relatively safe in this aspect. Devotion is gained primarily through defeating enemy armies, taking their cities, choosing a certain after-battle action, and directing specific buildings may also provide more devotion every turn. You can also lose devotion by attacking other Kislev factions though, from events, by building certain buildings, or by researching certain technology, so make sure you know which ones are worth it and when. But this is of course not all there is to it. You can't really have enough of devotion as there is no high ceiling, but that's kind of also the worrisome part, because as it turns out, you're definitely going to need all you can get. You see, devotion is not only needed to keep chaos away, but you also need enough devotion to gain supporters, and this is how devotion ties into the Motherland mechanic. The Motherland is all about gaining supporters across the Kislev factions, as you're in a race toward the top here against your main Kislevite rival, the Great Orthodoxy, who currently sees you as heretical. Supporters provide various bonuses after reaching the thresholds, and both you and your rival may gain these bonuses at the same time. However, only one of you may reach the maximum level of supporters though, after which you confederate the other and gain a massive diplomatic bonus with every Kislev faction, bringing you that much closer to confederating them as well. So how do we get to these supporters anyway? In other words, how do we reach these kids? Well, we may spend devotion on so-called invocations, meaning special religious acts that invoke higher powers. These provide us benefits depending on what we need and want, but we also gain followers based on certain actions, be them conquering settlements, defeating armies, or leveling characters. It's therefore up to you to decide which invocation suits your playstyle. Personally, I would recommend the invocation of Saliak, as it gives you one supporter per character level, and in these early stages, You'll gain a lot of those as you fight, conquer cities, and recruit even more characters and level them up. Gaining devotion and therefore supporters are crucial then, but on the way to the top, you might sabotage and get sabotaged by your opponent. By spending either gold or devotion, you can cut your opponent's followers by a number of 50, inflicting a massive blow to their efforts. Just make sure you can actually afford it before you do though. I really hope I'm not the only one getting serious Paris and Hector Brotherhood rivalry vibes from this one, by the way. Turning to our next feature now, we have the Adins, which is essentially just a fancy word for governor, so don't let that scare you away. Adins are not really recruitable agents and do not come from a family tree. Instead, you receive 1 adamant per 2 provinces you control, so they will be rare in the beginning. Adamants can improve various parts of a province, including income and development, and even though they can be used as generals in a pitch, you really should keep them in your cities where they're needed. They can also trigger events which will improve their skills in several ways, but the most important thing you can do is knowing where to place them so as to make the best use of them at any given time. Continuing along, we have the Ice Court, which might lack the beauty of a royal court, but definitely not the ceremony. You see, Kislev can recruit generic lords whenever they wish, but if you want to have a really powerful lord or hero, then the Ice Court really is where it's at. Here you'll be able to recruit powerful frost maidens or ice witches, heroes and lords respectively, with magical powers far superseding those of mere mortals. The Ice Court mechanic simulates the training of these, and takes several turns where you'll be able to influence their abilities and type through various decisions. Making sure to recruit enough of these will be important when your lands are invaded time and time again, so don't forget about those ice queens over at the Ice Court. And lastly, let's take a look at Kislev's unit roster. In contrast to almost every other faction, many of Kislev's units feature hybrid units, soldiers that excel at both melee and ranged combat. This means that your knights can whip out a gun before they whip out their swords, and it's a darn fine look indeed. But this means that it's important to be mindful of which weapon is equipped, and you don't want to be caught with your sword hanging from your belt when it's your pistol that ought to be holstered, if you know what I mean. The correct use of cavalry here will also mean the difference between victory and defeat, as your enemies will come at you with ranged armies time and time again. Alternatively, you could use your ice queens, ice lions, and ice bears to do the job for you, but all in good time of course. Kislev and the Ice Court then is a faction surrounded by potential enemies both within and without its own mega faction, so make sure to make good use of devotion and keep getting those followers. And speaking of followers, thank you so much for watching. If you're going to play Kislev first or if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments. If you're interested in Grand Cathay, then make sure to watch part 1 of this series where we take a look at how to best play Miao Ying and the northern provinces. And if you enjoyed the video, I really hope you leave a like and consider supporting me on Patreon. Every new supporting means the world to me and allows me to continue making content just like this and more. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.